Hi everyone, it's 𝘲𝗿𝗍𝗻 from Luxtalks podcast, and we are live today with episode 10, and I'm joined by my friend 𝘀𝗲𝗰𝗁𝗁 from 𝘀𝗲𝗰𝗁 Immigration Group.
Morning, Stefan.
So, Ken, thanks to be my guest today. How are you?
Really good. How are you doing?
Fine, fine. And it's a special day today for the interview because our company 𝘀𝗲𝗰𝗁𝗁 is just turned fourth year in business, so it's quite an important day.
It's pretty exciting, right?
Yeah.
I remember hearing your inception stories and all of the talk of the early days, and all pretty entertaining. So it's wonderful to see you guys where you are today. And it's what's amazing too is that even through all this, you guys are doing remarkably well, right? You're having some really good times right now, aren't you?
Yes, and I think it's because we are really focusing on customer service, and we keep being visible in terms of marketing, content on social medias, which
Yep.
you are doing as well. And
Yep.
I think it's important to be ahead of the crowd.
Yeah, and I think, well, obviously I've been doing much the same, and even while we were building the new brand in the background, so much of my time was spent making sure to keep my personal brand really active. I've been active in media, LinkedIn in particular, for almost 15 years. So, the one thing I wanted to make sure of was we didn't lose all that momentum. And if anything, quite the opposite, right? Because there's been so much to talk about. I think it's a bit like the American comedians. They've had lots to talk about for the last 3 years, right?
Yeah. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and your new business.
Talking about me, absolutely. Okay, so background, Canadian, born and bred Albertan, typically worked out of Canada most of my life. And a lot of my background is customer service, and I describe it as workforce solutions, right? So if you look at the companies I've worked for over the years, typically recruitment and immigration groups, or groups that are a combination, right? So
Yeah.
start off, I did a lot of work with the University of Alberta early days, working as a senior manager, which was really quite interesting because that was also in a unionized environment, right? So it gave me, as a young professional, a really good grounding on HR and hiring and all those things. And it was quite a big operation I was responsible for. So, a pretty good experience overall, good business grounding. And from there, I went into the recruitment space, but it was with the Manpower Group and on the professional side, and helped them build up their business in Western Canada, and did very well with that for several years. But what was interesting about that was at the time when the oil sands were really starting to move, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with the oil sands world, but there was a time when that was such a strong business that there weren't enough people in Canada to drive these projects at all by a long shot, and there was a stack of projects 25 deep, and these were all mega billion-dollar projects, right? So a lot of the work that was required to find people for this involved internationals, right? So my time was spent building programs that were focused on international recruitment and mobility built together for clients, right? So 𝘀𝗲, as an example.
So it's when you got involved into the international world.
Yeah, very much so, right? And because it at that point, I was focused very much on the recruitment side, but in order to actually facilitate that, we had to understand and build out programs that involve the immigration side. So a lot of time doing research and learning, but a lot of time also dealing with the government around creating specialized programs. Because some of the things that we were doing was we were doing a project for 𝘀𝗲 where we needed to analyze how they could potentially bring in 60,000 workers over a 5-year period for a very large project, right? And the model, though, was that they would be the group that would facilitate the search for all the candidates, for all their suppliers as well, and coordinate all that, right? So we were trying to figure out how we could manage all the immigration, how we could do the credentialing and all those pieces, right? So that's really where I got my start with the immigration side. And it was a really good experience, but it continued on because I left the Manpower group and I joined a group that was then called Air Energy, now Air Swift, which you probably know, right? And ran that group for a better part of a decade. And our whole focus was on this international recruitment and mobility piece. And we managed all the immigration in-house. So, over the course of 10 years, we brought in literally thousands of engineers and project managers and took care of all of the immigration mobilization in-house, right? So again, just very large scale project focus, very corporate focus, but you're also dealing with the individual, right? So the contractors are a unique subset, very entertaining, as I'm sure you know. But really strong experience, and left that group, did some consulting for a while, and then joined Newland and was leading their operations for 3 years. Pure play immigration. Great experience, great organization, and joined at a really good time when things were expanding very quickly, and a very unique perspective on the industry. And then, the changes happened and went on my own way. And early this year, started my own company, right? And that's where we are today. So, took the better part of 6 months building that in the background and doing related work and building up the network. And now we've launched, and it's happily, it's going very well despite the world situation, right?
And what decided you to become an entrepreneur? Did you think of doing something else when you left Newland Chase, or you already decided that you wanted to set up your own business?
I don't think you really decide to become an entrepreneur, right? I think you're either wired that way or you're not. I think that's part of your DNA, right? So, when you look back at my career, yes, I've been in corporate for most of my life, but when you look at how I worked within corporate, it was very entrepreneurial, right? So within all the companies I worked with, I was always the one that was going that way, right? Everyone is building this and going after these clients. I mean, well, that's all well and good, but what about all these opportunities over here that nobody else is focusing on? Why don't we build this and drive that? And frankly, that's always been the secret to my success, has been coming up with programs that not everyone was chasing and delivering very strongly on them, right? So I think I've always been entrepreneurial, and it was, I think, always a long-term plan that I would open something of my own, whether it was immigration specific or a combination of that and recruitment, whatever. But immigration is something I'm pretty passionate about. I love it because it's just so all-encompassing, right? It's not just about learning how to do the transactional, but you have to be very attuned to global trends, politics, economics. It's fascinating.
And to understand the people as well, to listen to who they are,
Oh,
and, because you're here to support them, and it's important to understand their story and their background to be able to assist them in the best way as possible.
yeah, and that's true on a couple different levels, right? So on the website, we talk a lot about their experience being personal, right? And it is, because no matter what the situation is, whether you're dealing with an individual that's looking to immigrate to Canada just for their own reasons, if you're looking at a corporate that's moving somebody in for an assignment, it still comes down to individuals, right? It still comes down to that individual's experience. It also comes down to, what their long-term goals are. And even from a corporate perspective, you're still dealing with an individual that is trying to further an agenda. But the goal is really, for me, to understand, what's the bigger picture? What is everyone trying to get out of this for the long term? And how can we build you a strategy and a plan to make that work? And that's the key for me, right? That's what I absolutely love. I love the solutioning, right? I like getting into a situation and understanding where are all the challenges, where are all the threats, how can we overcome that, how can we find you the best solution, how can we find you the most efficient way of getting that done, right? That's exciting, right?
Yeah.
I don't know why, it's always been a kick for me.
And did you think of setting up a business in another sector, or right away you knew that you would want to set up in the immigration field?
Yeah, no, immigration for sure.
Yeah.
I really just enjoy the area, right? And I think it's also one of those industries that, or sectors, that's going through a lot of change and certainly a lot of impacts from technology. And I can see how much is changing, but fundamentally, I don't think that you can potentially replace strong subject matter experts. And I'll use experts in scare quotes, right? Because, you know, anyone that says they're an immigration expert to me is someone who really isn't. You know, I don't think you possibly can be, right? There's just so much going on. But I do think it's an area that will always require a certain level of human touch. And I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for AI and technology to help out, you know, and to move the bar in terms of the administration and some of the vetting and those pieces. You know, but still the strategy, you need someone to discuss and understand, right?
Especially when you see that in a lot of countries, you still have paper files, and you cannot, you know, I mean, talking about Luxembourg, you need to, you know, bring everything in paper. You need to print all the pages of the passport, and you know, it's. I'm wondering if at one point things will go online, which I'm pretty sure it will.
It has to eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, and the Americans are the same way, right?
And I think it's there is still some, you know, some improvements to be done in the immigration market in terms of how countries are working, and also from companies we can improve the systems to make, you know, a better and more efficient way of working.
Yeah, and that's you know, that's such a big issue. You know, one thing that I know you and I talk about a fair bit, whether it's, you know, directly or online, but I do think that we're seeing a lot of changes in how companies want to work, right, and what the expectations are, right? So if anything has been learned over the last 6 months, I think it's really been that people's way of thinking has changed. You know, they don't necessarily need to simply follow the traditional. You know, they've all been forced into different ways of working themselves and working with their staff, you know, so that now gives them perhaps a different viewpoint on how they can work with their suppliers and really what they expect from their suppliers, right?
Yeah.
Just an interesting thought on that, and it's kind of a funny one. I remember reading, because I've been commuting into Calgary for years, and sometimes I've been commuting further for work, you know, but an hour drive every morning, and typically follow the same kind of route. So, you know, you have the hands-free on, and you do calls with whomever around the globe and try and get stuff taken care of. But, you know, I was reading once that keeping the same commute and the same route all the time is not a good thing. You should change up your commute on a regular basis and take a bit of a different path, because it opens your mind a little bit for the rest of your day. And I tried it several times, and it became true, right? It just takes you out of that routine, and all of a sudden you're just sort of looking at things a little bit differently. It's very funny.
I don't know if you saw it. I shared a post from a friend in Luxembourg who he's driving motorbikes, and he's saying that, you know, very often people take the same road, and it's the same in life. You know, follow the same path. And at one point, you know, if you want to change, you need to, you know, take the side roads, and like you do with motorbikes, because it's much more fun to take the side roads than to take the motorway. And I thought that you know, the comparison was quite good.
Yeah. No. And yeah, I love the twisty roads as well, but different story.
So coming back about talking about your you being an entrepreneur. So it was wasn't it a bit difficult or worrying to launch a new company in the middle of the COVID?
Yeah, you know, some people thought I was absolutely off my nut. You know, the world is closed down, borders are shut, and you're opening a new immigration company. And you're doing it from a small mountain town outside of Calgary, right? But for me, it just, I didn't really look at it that way. I mean, I looked at it as, this is a time when we're all, for a period of time anyways, more or less shut down, right? So I know you guys are spending a lot of time on your internal processes and doing other things. Well, what a great time to, you know, take care of the infrastructure. When do you get a window of time like this where you can? I mean, financially, it wasn't really a problem to do this, but it was really more a case of being able to make the time and feeling like you could make the time. You know, and realistically, you know, we had several months where this is a great time to focus on building something new, right? Everyone has more time in their hands, more flexibility. So for me, it was actually really good timing. So it was a combination of, you know, doing some additional professional development work in the background. So I've been doing courses all the way through just to keep, you know, keep current and all the rest, but also really building up the infrastructure, building up the network, building up partners in Canada, you know, finding the folks for the team. And the response has been really good. And the funny thing is, even though the borders are closed, you know, there's a ton of work to be done, right? Just because, you know, we're not bringing people in as much, and I'll qualify it because you can still come in under the right circumstances. You know, individuals are still looking to get their files in because they still want to become permanent residents. You know, corporates still need to do audits. You know, they still have strategies. They still have, you know, plans they need to execute. You know, for those that are or can qualify as essentials, they can still come in. So there's still a lot of work to be done. And I just found that, you know, as I was doing some of the planning, I kept on getting more and more requests for consults and saying, well, this is not going away, right? Like this is still a good time to build something. In fact, it may be one of the best times. So I think it's been really good personally. I've been really pleased with how it's come out, and the response when we launched the other week was just ridiculous. It was so heartwarming, right?
Did you, during the past 6 months, did you ever wondered if you had made, you know, the wrong choice, or you were
You mean other than every 60 seconds?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, right? Well, you know what it's like when you're starting, right? You know, you're perpetually going, I don't know, right? You know, and the phone doesn't ring for, you know, 20 minutes. And you're going,
What's
But I
going
think that's
on?
also, I think that's also the hallmark of the entrepreneur, right? You know, my wife has always maintained that, you know, I'm my own worst enemy, because even if my target is here, and it's a reasonable target, it's achievable, to me, even if I'm hitting that, it's nowhere near enough. It needs to be 2.5 or 3 times that, right? You know, so you're always just
I'm the same, yeah. I'm the
I know
same.
you are, right?
And I'm never satisfied about the result, even if it's good. I said, maybe we could have done better.
I know, right? I think this is one of the reasons why we get along, because I think we share that same, it can always be better, you know, and yeah, there's my mother-in-law, same story. Ken, it's never good enough for you. Well, it's always could be, you know, well, it was good, but it could be this, you know, yeah, you know, that meal was nice, but I thought I could have done this just a bit better, right? You know, so I think it's just how you're set up, right?
Any particular things that were a bit more difficult in the process to set up the business?
Yeah, well, yeah, I would say so. So for me, you know, the minutia of some of the IT was, you know, interesting because, you know, having worked with corporates for so many years, you know, you walk into a framework.
Yeah,
right?
you never think about what's behind the curtain. You just, you know, you plug in, it's working, and that's fine.
Well, when it's working, it's fine, right? But a lot of cases, not so much, right? And that's where everyone gets, you know, down in IT. But, you know, that part, I think just the really basic stuff around the IT setup was interesting, right? And it's still learning, and not so much just from a day-to-day operation, a case management system, or any of those sort of basic tools, right? That's easy enough to deal with because I've been dealing with enough of that. But, you know, really just the basic stuff about the marketing, right? And some of the new tools and how you can integrate, and how, you know, the website flow needs to work and all that. And happily, you know, I've got a ringer in my corner in the market communication side. Thank God for my wife, right? Because she's been doing that now for, you know, almost, well, a decade and a half, you know, so that part was, you know, certainly a bit easier, but there's still just the mechanics of all that. And I think that's frustrating, right? Because, you know, you want to be moving more quickly. You want all that stuff just to be working, and you want to see the website traffic, you know, multiplied, you know, 5 times every day. And
I think, I mean, I'm 4 years ahead of you, and I've followed the same path, and had the same questions, and also was frustrated at some time that things were not moving forward fast enough. But I think it's part of the game. And you know, I thought that having been on the market for so many years, it would be easy to come and you know, be a new company and bring a lot of customers. But it takes time, because you still have to rebuild the trust, and because you are a new company, even if they know you personally. And also the fact that because I was working for a big corporation, it was more difficult to build my personal brand, and which I had to do basically from scratch, when I was kind of doing some before. But I really had to emphasize, you know, the way I was publicly marketing my personal brand, to be sure that, you know, people would know me under the new brand.
I think that's an interesting point. I'll be honest. I'm not as concerned about building. You know, I always want more. I think that's a given. I think I'm also sensible enough to realize this will take time, particularly in this environment, right? You know, because I know there is a very significant pent-up demand, particularly around Canada, and there is a significant range of clients that I think will be interested in working with us. But your point, it does take a little bit of time, and it's just making sure that everyone's aware of it. I think, you know, a lot of cases, folks weren't even aware that I'd made a shift, you know, so it's kind
Yeah.
of a, oh, you know, what's happened there, right? Because, you know, people just see Ken, you know, they just, you know, I've been talking to Ken for years and, you know, whatever. And if they've just been working with the team, you know, they may not always be chatting with me
Yeah.
directly and they not know that anything's changed, right? So I think there's, you know, a bit of that going on, but I've also been working my personal brand maybe a little bit longer than you. And that's
Yeah.
no disrespect. It's just, I've been pretty cognizant about that for several years. So one thing I did change, I think, over the course of the past year, and I think you've kind of done the same, is really made that brand a lot more personal,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, people that know me know that I'm not really a cookie cutter individual. You know, I've got certainly a lot of strong opinions and I've got a lot of ways of looking at the world that I'm quite passionate about. But I think part of your personal brand is making it clear that that's who you really are, right? Because
Yeah.
I think when you're working with a big corporate, I'm sure you can relate, you're wearing the suit and the suit is the company and there's this corporate armor that's part of your persona, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
And it's, I think, frankly, that's a huge barrier, right? And it's no disrespect to the companies I've worked for because that's just, you know, them protecting their brand on some level, but there is a fairly rigid way of being and you need to project on behalf of the brand. And that's fabulous because they spend a lot of time developing that brand. But I think, you know, as you expand beyond that and you're creating your own personal brand, your own corporate brand tied to that, I think you need to change that. You need to be a lot more authentic. You need to be a lot more real because people want to deal with you. They don't want to deal with your company. Your company is nothing.
No,
The company is
exactly.
you.
I totally agree. And when you read a lot of articles, you know, on personal branding, it's exactly what they are saying. Is that people relate to people. They don't relate to, yeah, in a kind of way with some brands, but in our area of business, they relate to people. And I'm going to work with Ken because I know you. It's not because I know your company.
Well,
Uh,
and I think that's especially true in our industry, right?
yeah,
Because it's, in all cases, it's such a big risk to take, right? So if you're changing jobs and moving to a different country, or, you know, if you're moving your family, anything tied to immigration is highly emotionally charged, right? I mean, it really does impact you very directly. And I think even if someone knows you from some other context, if they know you're now in immigration or you've got your own immigration company after being with a corporate for many years, they're much more inclined to go to you than to, say, one of the big four or, you know, a major corporation, because there's just an underlying and foundational trust, right? And I think there's also an awareness that if, you know, what they're asking for support on is not something you can provide, you're going to know the right person, right? So
mhm.
I think that trust is a really important part in our business, right? And to your
Yeah,
point, you know, it
exactly.
takes a while to build that, but if people already have that within your network, you know, you've won a pretty large part of the battle, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting too. I mean, one of the things that I've really keyed into has been building up our global network, right? So, I mean, I've got relationships across the globe with wonderful people like yourself and folks like Lina in Sweden, and, you know, I could list tons more. But that's really been extremely important for me for a lot of reasons because having that network, even though we're focused on inbound, I still want to be the organization that people come to because they have needs in possibly a couple of different countries, right? So, you know, I was talking to one company a few weeks back and, you know, they work in Canada, they don't have needs right now, but they were struggling with needs for Africa. They were struggling with some needs in South America, right? I've got networks. I was able to very quickly connect them to those partners and they can facilitate that process, right? But I think that's a really foundational piece of our business is being that group that people know they can go to and they trust me, and by default, they'll likely trust my partners, right? And the
Yeah,
partners I'm dealing with are all very close, right? So,
and it's interesting because following our last discussion about the global network, and
yeah,
something I didn't really do. we've added a page on our website, more or less based on what you've done, talking about global partners.
Yep.
We have this kind of demand as well from people, coming to us saying, okay, we know that you are an expert in Luxembourg, but are you able to assist somewhere else? And of course, it's important to be able to say, okay, yeah, we have trusted partners, wherever in Africa or,
Yep.
or in the UK, to be able to refer them to somebody you trust.
Yeah, honestly, it's almost a daily occurrence for me now, right? So as an example, Damien was looking for support for a client in Poland. Well, I've got, a few different groups I know in Poland. It was a question of, finding who could take care of that particular type of file most effectively. PNG, Korea, honestly, it's a huge pile. But I think what that does is, when you're working in that way, you're also building trust in all kinds of different ways, right? So, I mean, what I love about all this is the fact that I'm also helping other people build their businesses, right?
Yeah.
And so now the trust I have with my partners increases significantly as well, right? So, my partner in the US, we've been sharing clients back and forth at an accelerating rate, and that's going to continue. I've got a new partner that I'm really excited about in Mexico, right? And that's the fun part too, right? Is getting to work with people that you like and trust. And I think that's one of the real key things about being in business, right? I'm not sure how you feel, but I mean, I love the fact that I now get to continue to work with all the really great people I've met over the last few years, right?
Like-minded people.
It's a huge deal, right? So for me, like the hours you put in doing something on your own, phenomenal. But it's not the same, right? Like it doesn't feel the same as when you're in a corporate and, oh, you've got to go on another road trip and do this, and you've got to be, working for 12 hours in this project. You're doing it for yourself, and you're working with people that you care about. That's a whole different game, right? This is just fun, right? This is just what I enjoy doing. I love doing.
And I think it's you also learn a lot. I mean, in the past 6 months, I've learned a lot from all the discussion I had during the lockdown, and people that have much more experience than me, or that have been entrepreneurs years before us, and it's interesting to have their feedback and their comments on all the issues they had on their journey to build their company. Like Lina, for example, I'm so impressed with what she's done and what she's built, and she's ahead of the pack, I would say, in terms of work from home and things like that. And I learned a lot from her.
Yeah, she's inspirational, to put it mildly. Yeah, no, and just a wonderful person too. But I think she is one of those individuals that also looks at the social nature of the industry quite a bit differently. And I mean that externally and internally, right? I think how she's built the culture within her company is very telling. And I think she's built an amazing network. And I know some of her staff from various conferences, right? Or staff's probably a poor choice of words, teammates or colleagues, but you can feel the positive energy from that group, right? And the confidence, and it's really great. And I talk to her on a fairly frequent basis, and as a sounding board, right? Because again, she's someone who's been there, done that, seen a lot of different things, but is still very much ahead of the curve and doing things that others aren't, right? So she's one of those industry leaders that has a relationship I cherish for sure.
Yeah. So you worked in nearly always in the same industry, recruitment and immigration. Did you have any big failure or challenge in your career until now, and maybe how you overcame it, or maybe was it a big challenge to set up your own company?
Well, this is not my first company. This is a second, right?
Oh,
because
great!
I had a consulting company prior, and it's still live. I don't work under it currently, but yeah, that was a great experience because it grew very quickly, and the focus was a bit different. It was a lot more focused on business development strategy, contracts, negotiations, and similar, right? And was helping companies that were struggling with how to win bigger pieces of business and didn't really have strategies in place, right? So, I would help them with RFP structures and all those pieces, and also brought Nicole in because she could help do all that as well. And I think, that was going really well. And that's actually what I was doing before I joined Newland, right?
Okay.
And that's in part how things with Newland triggered, because the then managing director and I, he was actually a supplier of mine for some time while I was at Air. So when we had really challenging cases, I would go to him and off we go. And then he sold his business to Newland and they took that over and built it. In any case, he was looking for some, additional support around business development strategies and similar, and that morphed into further discussions and ended up ultimately with my taking over the business for Canada. But one of the things I did that I think was probably the biggest mistake in my career was taking a client who I had on a contract basis and agreeing to be in-house with them for a period of time. And yeah, that did not go well. And it was one of the few times I think I've made an incredibly poor judgment call in terms of a working relationship. So, exiting that relationship was probably one of the most positive things I've done in my career. But again, it's a situation where things are going well and you've got your own company, and he's like, well, no, I'd really like to have you for myself and have you just, working a contract for us directly for this period of time. Yeah, that didn't go so well.
I think we all have, at least once in our career, an issue like that where we
a misstep.
Yeah, exactly. And we wish we hadn't done the move, and for the right or the wrong reason, we decided to do it. But it's difficult to get out of those contracts or.
I think, one thing I think I've learned, I wouldn't say I've learned more from the poor experiences, but I've certainly learned a lot from working for people that were not particularly strong, right? So I think you come away with some very big life lessons and business lessons from those. It's, what's the old line? It's a lot easier to define Zen by what it is not, right? So success is knowing that it's not this, it's not this, it's not this, and defining who you are as well. I really don't want to be that person. I really don't want to be that person. I like a lot about this, but you tend to define yourself over a period of time by those kind of variables, right? You kind of go, well, I've learned that that's really just not a part of who I am. I don't have that belief structure. And over time, you evolve into, who you are, or at least you start to realize that these are all the things that make you, right?
So yeah. So maybe a question on that.
Sure.
What has become more important in your life, and what became less important now that you're getting maybe older and wiser? I don't know if wiser is the case.
Yes, I have more maturity now. Says the guy that's like spends 2 hours a night playing Mario Kart with his kids. What's become more important? I think it's I don't know if it's so much that it's necessarily become more important as I think I've come to some realizations, right? So, you've been doing business development for years as well, and that's been, foundational to my career, like since day one. Even going back to the university when I was running food and beverage operations, it was still about building the business and what you can do to sell it, market it, and all those things, right? And one thing I've come to realize over the course of the past few years anyways is that the indirect sell is so important. And when I say that, I mean it's really so much more about the relationships. I've almost stopped selling, right? Like quite literally. I mean, if people want details, fine, but I'm really just now about relationships and really, how can we help? Don't get me wrong, there's still, there's a financial line you need to cross, right? So, I'm happy to have a conversation with anyone about, what their situation is and what their needs are. And at some point, if it becomes, more formal, if it's individual, it's an assessment, we bring in one of the consultants and now we start getting into fees. But, for the most part, it's really about helping. I probably spend about at least an hour a day you know, just responding to people that just have general questions and they're looking for some guidance. You know,
It's,
sometimes it
it's
turns into business, sometimes not, but yeah, right. Same for you?
yeah, I think it's important because it's also a way for people to refer you. I've been contacted by people because, you know, I answered a few questions asked by their friends or by their boss or by their employee,
Yeah.
and they came to us as a referral. So I think it's important, and you know, I've seen so many times in the past in working for big corporations where you have the sales guys that you know got the new appointment and he arrives and you take out his computer and just showing, you know, all the services he's offering. And I'm like, well, just put your computer back in your case and just ask, you know, the customer, what are his
Talk.
problems, where he's struggling. You know, maybe he only wants assistance on immigration. Maybe he wants, you know, assistance on house search for his employees or whatever. But if you don't listen to the customer, you won't be able to do that. You won't be able to offer the services he's looking for.
No, it's interesting. You know, one of my former colleagues and I talked quite a bit about this, and he's now doing very well with the organization. He's an SVP, but you know, we were having a joke about how people sell, right? And he and I had both come to the conclusion quite some time previous that coming in with a deck, yes, you know, it's good to have the collateral, but coming in and selling off the deck, neither of us did. Right. You know, I would always have the package available and it would be, you know, appropriate for the client and all the rest. But what we were doing was having a conversation, and we were having a conversation about what their problems were, you know, and what solutions they were looking for, and, you know, how we could perhaps help with that. And it's not about, this is all the things we can do for you. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4. You're like, oh. You know, I'd watch that on a regular basis. You know, you go to a trade show or a conference and the laptop would come out and the presentation would hit play, and you could hear the salesperson selling immediately, just going into a routine, right? And it would almost be the point where they would stop the client from interrupting them because they had to keep talking. Right? He's like, what?
This is, for me, it's very difficult when I go to conferences and then this person arrives and just take the laptop and just show, you know, their website and what they are doing. Is like, yeah, we are in this, you know, in the same industry. I know what you're doing. You know, we are just here to discuss, know each other a bit better. Not
Yeah.
about, I don't want to learn about each of your products.
No, and found that was that Euro in particular, because I see that some,
Right?
you know,
It
yeah,
happened
and no,
in Europe, but it has happened, you know, at 𝗲𝗍 and other
yeah. But I found it particularly, and I love Europe. It's literally my favorite group, right? And not to disparage
So
ERC or
maybe I
anybody
can
else.
just stop you a bit here. So
Yeah.
Euro, for the people that are
Oh,
listening,
sorry.
um, it's the International Association of Relocation Company, where, you know, we gather on a yearly, every year in a different place in Europe, and we also have support for different companies and so on. So just I will put the link into the podcast, so if people are interested, they can have a look.
Yes, and they should definitely reach out to 𝗲𝗄𝗃 and join,
Yeah.
and, you know, become a part of the family. But what I think, having been to a couple of Euros now, and, you know, made so many good friends through them, I was always struck by the difference of the people, right? So I mean, I'd go in and I'd normally have like 30 meetings booked, and it would be the usual dance in the lobby trying to find everybody. And some people you'd be meeting and you just going and having a conversation, right? And, you know, like you and I would go, hey, how you doing? And having a bit of a chat, and then off we go, right? But others, you know, the laptop would come out and it would be how quickly they could get through all the points in their presentation and then run away to the next meeting. It's like, well, chances are we're not going to have a relationship, my friend. Right?
I totally
you know?
agree.
Yeah. But I think, you know, in that organization, because there is such community, I think those individuals were, you know, such the rarity, right? And such the unusual sight that, yeah, anyways, I take your point, though. It's certainly very different. But I think for me, that's been a key learning for the last little while, is that it's really just about having that dialogue, right? I mean, the reality is, if they're talking to you about a very complex immigration matter, they appreciate that you have that knowledge, right? there's already a sort of a basic trust. You don't need to pitch endlessly on all of that. Really what you're trying to do is help them to understand, what some of their options may be, and to give them some comfort around how your group may be able to provide those solutions, right?
Coming back to your company, so you launched it last week.
Yeah, I like to say I like to say I outed myself, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I mean, the same for me. We set up the company. I think it was on 8th of August, and we officially launched the company on 1st of September. So, but it's been a bit more than 1 week. How does it feel? How is the feedback? You said it was very good.
yeah.
You have already, because of that, people reaching out to you for business.
Well, to be honest, there's been the company's actually been incorporated since February, so it's been alive and active since that time. Just in the background, right? Because lots of folks coming by and looking for a consult and some guidance on matters, research projects, and similar. So, my concern was make sure that we had the infrastructure completely solid before we flip the switch, right? Make sure all the pieces are in place. I mean, literally, there's been no business development whatsoever, literally none. The only thing that's been going on has just been, the ongoing marketing, and even that's softened a bit since the launch, because frankly, there's been so much going on to catch up with that it's been kind of like out of a fire hose. So I'm not complaining. It's all very good, right? But yeah, the response was really high. And we had a fairly strategic approach to how we were getting ready to launch, right? And making people aware that something was going on. There was a fair bit of chatter around it, right? So, when we did throw the switch on the website and we came out with a bit of a video and a few other pieces, the response was pretty significant. And I was having a laugh though, because I didn't realize some of the things that LinkedIn also did, right? So I knew that by holding back on connecting the company to the website was one thing, right? The company page on LinkedIn to the website, that was one piece. And then there was, the connection between the company page, website, and my personal profile, right? So, and I knew that, everyone gets a notification when you do that change. So I'd been holding back off on that, but I didn't realize that LinkedIn also did a separate post that, highlighted that. So everybody in my network got an individual message notification. The network broadly also got this huge notice. And then on top of that, we also had a video, and all those went out same day. So I literally had, oh my gosh, on the notification from LinkedIn, I think it's over 300 comments now. I have no idea how many likes or reactions, but it was crazy. The video was about half that, but the views were like at the very high end of a spectrum for any video that people talk about, right? Because when you do a video, they say that the actual viewers are probably 5 times or 3 times what the numbers show. Well, we were at almost 4,000, right? So, and then on top of that, all the individual messages, right? So I was getting all these people. So I'm trying to literally message, because I'm all about the follow-up, right? I mean, I don't want anyone to reach out to me and say thank you and congratulations and all that without actually having a proper conversation. So literally for 12 hours straight, I think I finished my last sentence. Like we pulled the trigger at about, I think, 2 in the afternoon. And I think about 1 or 2 in the morning, I finished my last note to somebody, and then started again the next morning at 6 a.m. Right? So yeah, no, it was really humbling, right? It was crazy, but it was good fun. And so
it's exciting. It's exciting to have such a return on, because you have this project. We've talked about it, and everybody's thinking it's great. But when you actually press the button and it's going live, and to see that the feedback is so good, and that people are happy that you're making the move, it's just it's crazy.
Yeah, no, and literally well-wishers from all over the planet. And one of the things that really stood out for me was getting responses from people literally that I haven't talked to in 13, 14 years, right? So people that knew me from the earlier days of my recruitment and workforce mobility career. So folks that I'd helped bring across from England for a project who've now been in Canada for 15 years, right? Reaching out and just, virtual hugs and all this. And it's just, I mean, to me, we talk about the trust and the relationships you build up over time and how important that is. That meant so much, right? Because these are people that knew me from a completely different part of my life, related, granted, because, we helped with the immigration and all the rest of it and the mobilization, but to have them being so supportive now, just, it really meant a lot, right? And there was a lot of that, right? And when I was with AIR, we ran so many large projects, bringing in 200 people from Venezuela for projects in Edmonton with 𝘀𝗲𝗄𝐼 and all these kinds of things, right? And all those people are still in my network, right? And I still converse with them every once in a while. Right? But it was so nice to see all that outpouring. It was really cool. So.
Okay, maybe we can go, if you agree, on a more maybe personal part.
Sure.
So that people understand a bit more who you are. So for you, what is the perfect weekend? What's the perfect weekend look like?
Perfect weekend. Wow. Summer or winter? Summer or winter? You got to tell me which one, because it's all seasonal,
okay,
right?
let's say winter, because
Okay.
I know that you love to surf.
Yeah. Well, yeah, winter is a couple things for us, right? So for those that don't know, we live in Canmore, and Canmore, a lot of people wouldn't know the town, but it's in between, it's outside of Calgary, not that far, easy commuting distance, and a wonderful town, but it's also just 20 minutes down the road from Banff. And most people around the world have heard of Banff. It's one of Canada's national treasures, it's a gorgeous national park. And we moved here very specifically several years ago, 7 and change now, I remember, because I was working Edmonton, Calgary a lot and doing some international, and we just wanted some place that was a great place for the kids to all grow up. And I felt, better that we lived here than in Calgary, because we lived in Calgary and loved it, but, just more time for the kids to be in the mountains here. So we've always been very active outdoor folks. And for me, in the winter, it's all about the snowboarding and it's all about the cross-country skiing. And I love them both. And for some folks, they kind of go, you cross-country ski and snowboard? Right? Because culturally, they're quite different.
Yeah.
You don't typically find a lot of snowboarders or cross-country ski, and certainly not vice versa. But yeah, for me, that's the perfect weekend is, we spend one day as a family going out doing cross-country skiing, and then we spend another day doing that. And in amongst that, we'd be cooking as the family, because my wife and I both love to cook. The kids are very adventurous eaters, right? So, it's, we can do anything. And yesterday, as an example, I made homemade miso ramen from scratch with dumplings, and the kids are, super happy. But for me, that's the joys, right? Is being able to live that life, right? So, and it's just about doing that with family and friends, right? So being out is a really big part of our lives. It's, I can't stress that enough. It's really just who we are, right? So, when you look at the basement, I've got the collection of vintage snowboards up on the wall.
Yeah, you've shown it to me, and I must say that it's a passion that we share. I mean, I like you said, normally you just stick to one, winter sport, but I've been testing them all, and I just love it. And if I can ski and doing cross country skiing, I've also done some kite snow boarding as well.
Yeah, I don't have the guts for that. That's just too
but
many
it's
to think
just
about.
amazing. So it's a great way to take the stress away, and to I mean, we have less snow than you. It's a bit more difficult here. But when I can do that, I just love it.
Well, and for me, what I love about that, one of the things that I love about, so in the summertime, it's mostly about the cycling, right? So cycling and hiking and, the other things, but mostly cycling. And I do road biking and I also do mountain biking, but, and a bit of a different spin, right? So cross-country skiing, I kind of equate to, there's some excitement to it, don't get me wrong. It's a bit more like road biking, right? So it's a little bit more zen. You get a bit more time just to think and clear things out and process. And, it's just the sound of the rhythm of it when you're skiing, and the road bike is just the sound of the wheels, right? And I also love the descending, though. I love that, the 70K downhills, that's really good. But, mountain biking and snowboarding, very different, because for me, that's the excitement, that's the fun, right? And that's where everything goes away. you can't think of anything else. All you can do is be in that absolute moment, because if you don't, you're hurtling at, 70K down a mountain and you crash. Well, that's it, right?
Yeah.
So I love that excitement and that thrill. So very different, and I do them both for, sort of complementary reasons. But yeah, those are good weekends for me.
Yeah, cool. So lastly, to wrap up the discussion, maybe you can give the people that are listening 2 or 3 best tip or advice for people that would want to launch their own business, or things that you've discovered when you started your own.
Yeah, I think one key piece is don't wait. There's never a good time, right? It's like starting a family.
Yeah.
Just when it seems like there's a good opportunity, go for it, right? Don't hold back. And I would suggest the other thing is that planning is important. Having a roadmap is good. And if you know me, my whole world is about reverse engineering, right? I look to see where I want to get to, and I come with a plan, and there's plan Bs, plan Cs, and plan Ds, but I hate plan B and I hate plan C and D, but they're always there, right? But the complementary piece to that is you shouldn't wait to have the perfect plan, right? Because the perfect plan doesn't exist. A good plan hastily made and executed is worth way more than the perfect plan that you spent years developing, because by the time you finish developing it, it's dead anyways, right? So I think you need to get into the game. And this is not applying to my view on immigration, because that's a very different world, and that's completely compliance and making sure you have the absolute correct path, but when you're talking about building a business, I think you need to immerse and move, right? And people will remember you as a snapshot in time, and you still need to hold to your values and do all the right things. But they don't always have to be the perfect choice. It doesn't have to be the perfect marketing plan. It doesn't always have to be the perfect strategy for getting your message out. You just need to get it out.
Yeah, you remember we had a discussions a few months back about using pictures and doing videos on LinkedIn. And
well, we've had a few of those, so okay.
But I remember you saying, "Well, I'm not ready. It's not perfect," and blah blah blah. And it links to what you're saying. That basically you have to move and do it. And you've seen, all the pictures and with the posts with pictures and videos that you've done. Yeah, I mean. The people really liked it, and it was really interesting as well. So, it's good that you did the move, and I was the same. I used to, stay back, didn't want to publish any videos, didn't want to publish any personal things, and basically you need to be who you are and move forward.
Yeah, and I think for me, the reticence around the videos was probably, in hindsight, was probably more about the technology, right? And getting it right. So, I mean, I'm also the person, I mean, I hate seeing myself in a picture. I can't stand so you look online and you'll see videos of you. I know, well, no, some people love it. Come on, like some people just attention fish and just want to be out there and do all that.
Yeah, but you have some politics we know that love to be on stage.
Yeah, right. But even so, I do an interview for GBTA or ERC or whatever, and it would go up, and I wouldn't look at it at all. I'd have it, and people say, "Oh, that was really good." It's like, I don't know, I haven't looked at it. What do you mean you haven't looked at it? Because I don't want to see it. I can't stand looking at myself, right? So, it makes me laugh. As and we talked earlier about experts and people that are self-professed experts. To me, just probably the most dangerous things in the world. As soon as someone says it to me, I'm usually going the other way, because if you think you know that much, chances are you know a great deal less, in my mind. But over the course of the last several months, I've had so many people coming up and saying, "Oh, thought leader this and influencer that," and all this. And going, that's flattering. It's very kind, but to me, it still just comes off as a bit astounding, right? I feel like I've got a face made for radio and a personality meant for print, right? So to be out like this somehow is just like, okay, well, I'm happy to do it, but really, is an interest? All right.
Yeah. Great. So if our listeners wants to connect with you, what is the best way to do that? And I'll just put the info in the podcast notes.
Yeah, and for me, it's you can go to the website and take a look at what we have. And there's an info or an inquiries line there, but you can also just reach out to me directly, and make sure that you get handled. So it's just ken@nicolaine.ca, and it's NICKELLANE.ca, and they'll all get to me regardless, but whatever your choosing approach is. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn and however else you want. It's just, I find I get so bombarded through LinkedIn, and I try to respond to everybody. But I find that system for the emails and messages a little clunky. Things tend to disappear. So, if you have a more formal request or an immediate need, reach out to me via email. That's a good starting point, and then we'll get connected via phone or what have you, right?
Great. Thanks for your time and for joining the podcast, Ken. I really enjoyed our discussion, and I'm sure we'll have some more in the future.
I'm always happy to chat, my friend. Enjoy, and thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.